right?
Not yet.
Okay, let's do that. Actually, I don't want to do that. I want to share.
Yes.
Okay. Good. You should be able to see that soon. And we will be on. I'm going to record this through Zoom rather than on. Actually, no, I'm going to record this. Yeah, let's record it through Zoom. It'll be easiest. Record on this computer. And we are recording. Shows up there, that's good. And take this out, plug it in here. Excellent. Make sure I have everything. Get this over here, turn my new on.
Hi, can I videotape you?
Absolutely, you're welcome to. This is also being saved to YouTube, so you'll be able to see it there later on.
Okay, so this is,
Yes.
not you wandering around talking.
Everything will be soon. Eventually, I'm going to edit it and take out this initial part of it. But not just, actually, it's not just this. It'll also be the audio. The audio will be recorded from whatever shows up on the computer, which is an excellent point. I probably should stay over here close to it so that the audio is picked up.
Okay, then I'll catch it on YouTube under Kevin Moore.
Well, I encourage you to stick around and videotape it because you. Oh, you can't. You're welcome to videotape it if you want. I'm hopeful that it will. You know what? It'll be recorded one way or the other. Also, this QR code has a link to the presentation. You're welcome to capture that if you like.
I'm just going to set up my camera and start it, okay?
That's perfect. Yeah. Thanks for coming by. So welcome and thank you for attending. It's hard to compete with the chair race. It's just, one of those things, but we're recording this. Hopefully there'll be an opportunity for people to see it later. For those of you who can't come now, I'm planning on having this both on YouTube and I'll have a recording available offline as well. My name is Kevin Moore. In my professional career, I am a sales executive working for a variety of startups over many years. And my goal has been to take revolutionary technologies and sell them to people who don't know they need them. Now, you might think that having the best solution is a great thing. Hey, why wouldn't someone want to buy a chainsaw if they're used to using an axe to chop down trees? Or why wouldn't they want to use the internet if they're used to using a fax machine to sending documents back and forth? Well, it turns out that it's more complicated than having the best technology. Historically, often the best technologies have not won the race. Many of you are familiar with Beta versus VHS from way back when. There's all kinds of other examples, Netscape versus Microsoft and other examples of companies that had a great technology but didn't end up winning. This is applying that message and those set of ideas to selling libertarian messaging to the mainstream voter. And what do we need to do to help get there? And this QR code has information. It's probably going to be hard to scan from where we are here, but there will be a way to get that later. So what do I mean by crossing the chasm? Well, it's actually the name of a book. Jeffrey Moore wrote Crossing the Chasm, and it is the Bible in the startup technology world for how to sell disruptive technologies. The reason I am bringing this out is, hey, libertarianism is disruptive. We're talking about a different way of doing things. We're talking about reinventing government from the inside out. Now, for us, that's exciting. Hey, we have all these better ways we can do things. We can fix all these problems out there. For the vast majority of people out there, it's terrifying. They're concerned about how it's going to impact their retirement, their fire department, their welfare, all kinds of support that they might want. How can they get the things they need from government if we go and change everything on them? And that's the challenge we have right now, is how do we understand the psychology of buying into something completely new, and how mainstream voters are going to take that. And one of the key points here is that the messaging that has attracted LP members so far, as you'll see, that is not what's going to work with the mainstream market. I'll get into that in just a little bit. So how do we deliver our message? Who do we target? And how do we get there from where we are today? Let me start with a little bit of history about libertarianism. The early adopters of libertarian messaging are people who love ideals. Hey, we want to do the right thing. We care about how, the process, the ideology of it. Taxation is theft. Don't harm anybody else, and don't let anybody else harm you. That's a really simple message. Those idealistic principles are part of our visionary view of the world. We like the fact that it's new and different. We like the fact that it changes the status quo. On the other hand, pragmatic mainstream voters, they want proof that something's going to work. They want to be able to drive it out of the store. They are not the people who want to make a car from scratch and be able to watch something that they made with their own hands drive out the door. They want to go down to the Ford dealership and buy something. They value consistency, effectiveness, mainstream relationships, and existing track record. So how do we get the track record that they want when we don't have a track record? Well, that's the challenge. This is a slide from the Crossing the Chasm book, and it talks about 4 different groups of people. The innovators are the people who start off, very first people to use technologies. They're the ones who love inventing stuff, making things from scratch. The early adopters are people who are really the ones who make new things happen. They like the idea of new technology, and they want to apply it to something. They're not going to just use technology for technology's sake. Like, have you ever seen that box where you flip a switch and the box opens up and it flicks the switch off? I think that's cool, but it's completely useless. That's a visionary right there, an innovator. Somebody who just does that because it's cool. An early adopter is someone who takes that and applies it to making some Raspberry Pi device that can be used in a real application. Well, between there and the mainstream market is a big gap that Jeffrey Moore calls the chasm. The mainstream people, they want pragmatic solutions. Is this the best way to solve my problem? What relationships does this have with my existing products and solutions? How do I handle my day-to-day job with this technology? They don't want to worry about the fact that, well, okay, you've got the best engine out there, but does your car have a steering wheel? Does it have a CD player? Does it have an air conditioner? They want to know that all those pieces are there. And the way they know that is not by making a laundry list of the features. It's by the relationships you have. It's by looking in Road and Track magazine and having them say, hey, these guys have a good car. So in the technology world, we talk about innovators, early adopters, the majority, and the laggards, people like, the folks in the room the other day who don't have internet or don't have a phone that they can use to vote right now. Those are people that, hey, there are people you have to worry about at some point as well. That's not who we're selling to. We're not selling to the hardline Republicans or Democrats. In the political world, visionaries and idealists are the people we've reached out to so far. Those are the people who've bought into our message. Our next group are the pragmatists. How do I really make this work? How does this address the things I'm concerned about government being able to do? And the party liners and cynics, we don't have to worry about them. It's going to be years before they come around, and they'll only come around when they absolutely have to. It's often hard to recognize where we are in that path because the same people, the same types of people, can often be members of different ones of those groups. They have similar types of engagement in the way they talk to us, but they have different ways of valuing what's important to them. The reasons that they buy into a particular movement or a particular solution are very different. So for early adopters, we're looking for some kind of change agent. We want to be ahead of the curve. We want to make things different. We believe in innovation, and we're not expecting a personalized experience or message. We're expecting we're going to have to work to make something happen. On the other hand, early majority people want something that's continuous. They want to know that everything's just going to happen the way it's supposed to when they move over to this solution. Imagine buying a new car. We talked about that example. You want to know that certain things are just going to be there without having to think about it. They're looking for evolution, not revolution. Revolution is scary. Revolution is bloody and messy. Evolution is just a small change on top of what you already have. They're expecting a complete solution, not just a point solution, like a great engine, but something that handles all the things they want, including the extended warranty and the AAA insurance and all the things that they're expecting to come with the experience of a particular product or ideology, and they don't want to have to debug it. They don't want to have to figure out how to fix it. They just want it to work. And that's a clue as to what we're going to have to do next. So coming up next, I've got a few examples of some views that people in the mainstream might have of us. You might have heard this view of a libertarian traffic jam and libertarian traffic control. Gee, there's not a whole lot of good solutions there. And anyone who's ever driven in New York City, if there were no traffic lights in New York City, you would have this. They actually had real gridlock there at times. Libertarian snow removal. Hey, my driveway is clear. How about yours? Some people think about libertarianism. They think, how is this going to work? This doesn't make sense to me. And of course, the ubiquitous libertarian fire department, where you're using the buckets and hoses to help take your stop the fire in your neighbor's house. There's some things here that are important. I like the fact that I can call up 911 on my phone, and in just a few minutes, some people will come with high-power hoses and all kinds of great equipment to put that fire out, and I don't have to worry about it. Lots of good things there. But the key point here is not that solution. It's the people's perception that we're against having that. The people's perception that, hey, we're looking for everybody to take care of all this themselves. What's this solution going to look like? And they need some reassurance that we are not going to throw out the baby with the bathwater as we come up with solutions to existing problems that have been solved for many years. So, a couple of important points about the early adopters versus, this is not well organized. You can't see the titles, but a couple of key things about early adopters versus mainstream users. Large organizations or even government entities can be early adopters. They just have to have a problem where they need to make a change. Unfortunately, those early adopters, because of what they care about, because of their belief in doing things differently and trying to make change, are not good references for early majority customers because they have different goals. Majority customers, majority voters need references. They need some kind of an endorsement, someone they know and trust to say, yeah, this person has a good idea. Having people in the mainstream, like Gary Johnson 4 years ago, hopefully Jo Jorgensen with her background will appear more sane than other candidates out there this year. But if we were just having a vote based on the quality of the candidates, I think Jo would win in a landslide. It's more than that. They want to understand how that person relates with other different groups and have references from places they know and trust, saying that this is someone that they can trust. They're basing their decisions on reference and relationship, not on their own analysis. In the technology world, they talk about being sales-driven during this period as fatal. What does that mean in the election world? It means we can't focus on number of votes. What? We're in an election, we can't focus on number of votes? Yeah, we can't focus on number of votes. If you focus on how do we get the maximum number of votes, you'll end up using a set of strategies that simply doesn't work. If you try to go after everybody, you won't get far enough with anyone. And let me elaborate on that. So early adopters have, the messaging that we use in approaching voters, the one that we're used to, things like the NAP, the idealistic core principles that we have, we can take those and abstract them and apply them to all sorts of different situations across the spectrum of human experience. And we're used to doing that. We like that. The next step after that is an expected message. And that includes, hey, when someone goes to Joe's website, what are the different planks? Do you have an answer for every platform question? For a few weeks there, we didn't have an answer to the Second Amendment question. People are expecting that. How do you have that information there? Beyond that, there are the augmented and potential solution in messaging, which go even further. How can we address certain hypothetical situations, certain unusual circumstances, and be able to talk about the real-life implications of how these policies are going to affect a single mom who relies on government child care in order to be able to make ends meet, or a farmer who would go out of business without some kind of subsidies. What are our solutions for those people? For them, it's about pragmatically, how do I survive? Not just, what is the best ideal situation? And many of them will find justifications for the status quo. Well, I pay so much in taxes, I've earned the right to have this farm subsidy. I've earned the right to have this free cell phone, this free child care, this free tax deduction for my home interest mortgage interest. It's challenging taking those things away, and we need a message that's going to help people understand, hey, this is how it's going to work for you. You're not going to be left high and dry. So the reason many of us came to the LP is we believe that this is the most just, the most efficient, the most pure form of government. Not all of us, but many of us. We see this as something we want to leave as a legacy to our children, and that it can help us do things that our existing government can't do well, like get out of the wars in foreign countries. That'd be great if we could do that. So we're looking at it based on the function of government. What are the different functions that government performs, and how can we improve on those functionalities? Majority voters are looking at referrals, herd mentality. Where are the most of my friends going? What are most of my friends talking about? What do they believe in? What's the standard or the major political party that I can trust in to get something done when I want to get something done? What's the overall result of this system? We can certainly talk about the cost of looking at the ends justifying the means, but many people look at it that way. Hey, overall, what's the result of this going to be? You can legalize heroin, but I'm going to have 27 people addicted to heroin sitting on my front porch and breaking into my house. Well, no, that's not the case, and there are some better solutions. Let's talk about Portugal. Let's talk about making this a medical condition and not something we throw people in jail for. And then also the quality of support. What can people expect from the systems that they've become used to? Will they still have a fire department? How will we handle certain aspects of government they have come to depend on, and will those systems still be there? So the four biggest issues that prevent mainstream voters from choosing the LP, the first is the lack of respect for us. They look at us and our experiences and say, you guys are nuts. You want to change everything. It's the exact opposite of what they care about. They need to hear from someone who is like them, and that is an iterative process as we get closer and closer to the groups of people that we talk about, and we'll talk about those groups in a minute. A second is that we take more interest in ideals than we do in their personal experiences and needs. If you talk to someone who counts on that government paid daycare in order to make ends meet, anything that involves getting rid of that, she'll stop listening right then. I met a guy out doing some polling in 2016, 67 years old, and he said, I'm not listening to anything. I've paid in. I'm going to get my Social Security. I don't care. I'm doing this. One issue, that's all he cared about. Unless we can address that issue, we're not going to get through to him. So we have to have solutions related to those. They're concerned that we fail to recognize the importance of existing infrastructure, like the systems that people count on and why things are the way they are. Hey, the FDA, we can get rid of it, but what about the Chicago meat market situation in 1906? There's a reason why the FDA came into existence, and that's because meat makers were killing people. They were selling poisoned meat, and there was really no way to hold them accountable. So how are we going to handle that? Are there ways to address that? Answering those questions is one thing that can help on that front. And then the relationships and partnerships that are endorsements from people who they know and trust. So I've spent about 30 minutes here talking to you about the problems in reaching mainstream voters, how they don't trust us, how they don't want to listen to idealistic solutions. What's the answer? Well, the answer is, and you can't see it up here, but bowling alleys and beachheads. So if you ever go bowling, you want to hit that very front pin and it knocks the rest of them over. There are certain groups of people where if you win them over, there are certain groups that will follow on one after the other. And the key here is you want to focus on certain groups of people, ones that we have a strong connection with, ones who have a real problem that is not being addressed by the existing systems, by the existing parties. So they're failing to address it. We have an effective solution, and we have relationships with people they know. Let's talk about one possible way to do that. You want to look at who the target person is, what their reason is for wanting to change. How do we affect their lives overall, not just as this particular issue, but everything that they care about? And what are the competitive solutions offered by the mainstream parties? So let's look at a few examples. I'm not there yet. That's on the next page. Okay. Separate from bowling alleys is a concept called beachheads. A beachhead is like when you're in the military, you're trying to land on the beach in Normandy. It's a difficult situation, but you want to find a great place to do it, one where you have the best chance of success. That includes having partners and allies who can help you there, a way to get where you want to go, a way to distribute your message, an understanding of what the cost is to society, and one that is a good and effective cost from their perspective, and solid positioning compared with the existing solutions from the other customers. And then for that bowling alley, who is the next target customer? After we win that group, who comes next after that? Hopefully there is some domino effect that comes from winning that group over. Let's look at a few example groups based on that. So one that people talk about often, and hey, why aren't gun rights groups coming to the Libertarian Party? The Republicans certainly aren't their friend. The NRA certainly isn't their friend. The Democrats certainly aren't. Well, we do have a good message for them, but at this point they believe that the Republicans still represent them well. So it's going to be hard to make inroads there because they still have that relationship with the NRA and with gun rights groups that it's just going to be real hard to crack. So we can focus on that, but we might not make much headway. Civil rights groups. We have a lot of great messaging around civil rights, but the Democrats also have good messaging in some areas there. So it's important to continue to deliver that messaging. I'm not saying we stop talking to those people, but if we want to focus on one group to go after first, the civil rights groups might not be the best group to go after first. Well, how about fiscal responsibility and taxpayer groups? Are the Republicans serving them? Not at all. They've jacked up the debt by what, $4 or $5 trillion here over the last 4 years? The Democrats aren't after fiscal responsibility. All those taxpayer groups, those folks who are interested in, hey, how do we ensure that we aren't leaving a legacy of debt for our children? They're a great candidate for us to go after. We're the only people out there who are actually talking about solutions to that problem. The same thing with bringing our troops home. There really is no major party support for stopping overseas intervention that we've had going on for years. It's been 30 years of straight war here in the U.S. And people will switch back and forth between parties, but nobody's bringing our troops home. That's an area where we can provide a solution that no one else has. It's this thing here, I think. That's, if we move this back, it might happen, but I'm not going to try and fix it right now. Sorry. So looking at these groups, those two particular groups of voters, people interested in fiscal responsibility in government, people interested in bringing our troops home, are great places to start. This doesn't mean that we're not bringing in people from all different perspectives, all different viewpoints and concerns, but let's pick one of those groups and win it completely. We want everyone in that group. Anybody who cares about fiscal responsibility in government, we want all of them in the Libertarian Party, if that's the first one we choose to target. After that, what comes after that? Well, fiscal responsibility might be related to, I'm blanking here, but some other aspects of concern. People with those particular interests might also be interested in certain other key voting issues, and we could go from one point to the next to the next. So this is a way to analyze those groups to figure out how to approach going after the market one chunk at a time. So to sum up, the idealistic principles that attracted many of us up to this point are not typically going to appeal to mainstream voters. They're looking at endorsements, they're looking at herd mentality, they're looking at, hey, I don't want to spend a lot of time thinking about this, I just want it to work. What's going to make this work properly? And hopefully we get there before everything has failed so badly that we have a real mess on our hands. Maybe we're already there. We need to be able to tailor our message to specific groups and needs, to provide answers to questions, but without compromising our core principles. It's not a matter of changing what we're going to do, but just explaining it the right way to that person. Hey, what would it be like if your the part of your taxes that is for not income taxes, but all the other stuff. I forgot the word right now. What if those taxes went down by half and you were able to spend that money on the daycare that you want? How would that help you? What more could you do if you had that money available to you and you had the ability to take other actions with it? And building relationships with the right people to show mainstream voters that we're serious with serious solutions. So what can we do now? The first is build relationships, endorsements, media, and voting bloc support. I think we need to focus on endorsements right now. How do we get the right people? I heard Carly Fiorina recently come out and endorse Joe Biden. If you look at her planks from her previous campaigns, with the exception of LGBT issues, she is so closely tied to libertarian principles. I think she'd be a great person to endorse us. We're not there yet. We haven't gotten people like her to say, hey, you should look at Joe Jorgensen instead of talking about the only alternative to Trump being Biden. Find ways to address specific groups with our messaging and show solutions for the systems we'll be changing. Not just say we want to get rid of the Department of Education, but here's how it will work now. Yes, your local communities can do this. There's really nothing the Department of Education is doing that can't be done locally. And kind of go through that in a way that will help people understand, help those endorsers understand that we have a real solution here. So this QR code will work if you want to grab a copy of the slides. I want to open it up to questions. Do any of you have any questions or thoughts about what we've talked about here today?
A quick comment. I really like the way that you're able to use crossing that chasm. But then, like on a more of a local level, I mean, me being working, like a 9-to-5 job. I mean, is the best way is just to team up with the county, like Libertarian, or what are some ways that you feel like we could do this on a day-to-day level?
So this is independent of how we go about it. Whether it's done through national campaigning and messaging through social media, whether it's you talking with your friends, or whether it's getting out with a group of libertarians at mass transit or at a local mall to tell people about things. These apply across the different spectrums of those activities. However you want to do it, people are looking for messaging from those they trust. Some of that's your friends, but some of that is organizational, to make real progress beyond just the people we know. Because we all know a bunch of people, but a lot of us know each other. And there are some people who will be hard to reach with our own networks. To reach those people, we need to be able to connect with folks who will endorse us, and with some of those sources who they know and trust. When the USA Today newspaper came out and said, we don't think that Trump is fit for the presidency, that's an example. When Gary Johnson got an endorsement from the Chicago Tribune, that's an example. Having endorsements and recommendations from people that they know and trust. So what are some ways that you might reach out and connect with people who are more mainstream that you've talked to about libertarian principles in the past?
Well, I just kind of have a comment just for you guys, and to kind of go back to your question a little bit. So I'm here as an unaffiliated voter, and I'm here looking for answers, because I don't like my options that I'm given, right? And so to kind of answer your question, I'm I'm here attending all these, side breakouts because I really am trying to educate myself and see how I can fit in and if these are the values that I'm looking for. And I think that you guys have a lot of answers that we're looking for. Like you're asking how do you kind of get out to the community, how do you spread your message? I personally, as a millennial and a young voter, I'm on social media. I see the conversations that, us mainstream voters are having, and none of us are happy with the duopoly, right, that's going on right now. None of us are. And I think that there are lots of ways for you guys to be able to reach more people that are like me by just simply going out in your community. Like, for example, I'm also a Black woman, so I've been attending some peaceful protests and listening to Black Lives Matter movement and things like that. And there are a lot of libertarians that are attending these protests, taking the time to speak out and spread the message. Another thing, I went to another session yesterday, or the day before, I forget which one, and there was a South Carolina representative talking about how she, in her monthly meetings, are literally bringing in local nonprofit organizations, whether it's women's rights organizations or whatever organizations, to kind of open up that conversation and see how we can help each other out and spread that message. And so I think that's a great way to start because we are looking for this message, and I can, maybe there are, these preconceived notions. So that's because we aren't educated enough to know differently. And so I think that you guys have a real chance of breaking through to us because a lot of us are really looking for a different answer right now. And I think between community things and social media, especially with the younger voters, there's a strong hope for you guys to build that voter base. And I'm literally here as one of those people attesting to that for you guys. So I do think there are ways that you can do this and open up the conversation and spread your values because I think that they are very important. And I actually agree with a lot of things. As someone that is not happy with Trump or Biden, does not want to have to pick the lesser of two evils. I don't want to have to repeat 2016. I want another answer. And I think a lot of us are looking for them. We just don't necessarily know that the answers might exist within this party or how to find the answers with this party. So I think it's just really talking to friends and gun members and local organizations and bringing them in and spreading that message. And the lady from South Carolina, like she has a great thing going on right now where like every month they bring in a different nonprofit. And they just share their ideas back and forth. So just open conversation.
Okay.
And she said that that's given her a lot of grassroots movement where she's been able to actually like double her libertarian attendee base now for her monthly meetings.
I love what you're saying there. So you're talking about bringing in different groups to talk to the team, and it attracts people from outside of the libertarian scope. Hey, we have a group of women voters or women's rights folks who are coming in here. It's not just about libertarians. It's about an overall set of issues. And now we have a conversation going on about something that this particular group cares about. How can we talk about how libertarian principles apply to that?
Absolutely.
I like generally what you're saying. It's kind of going to affect the seating the issue of civil rights. I think that's one of the key areas that should be there. Showing how government policing and war on drugs actually leads to a system in which racists and other sociopaths have an outlet to actually get praised for abuse. And that's a huge missed opportunity. And I went to some of the protests in Orlando, including one of Martin, and it was really sad not to see those libertarians out there. It's really one of the very
It's a missed opportunity if you guys don't understand on.
So I don't like the idea of seeing that.
I'm with you on that, but I think you missed the key point that I had there. It's not that we're not doing it. It's not that we should stop doing that. It's that we want to focus on one group of people that we can win completely. And in that particular... Well, but here's the thing. The Democratic Party actually has some very good messaging in that space as well, at least as perceived.
But they failed.
So, hear me out. They might have failed, but a lot of people don't perceive that they failed. I mean, there's a reason why more than 75% of black voters are still Democrats. So if we target that first, we're going to have a lot of people say, yeah, but the Democrats have a good solution there. I'm fine with being Democrat. Thank you very much. The key is to find a particular segment that we can completely win and use that as a launching point for the next one. It's not that that's not an important issue. It is. But it's that we it's about choosing your battles and where to go after. You don't want to fight and pick an armored place on a hill as your first place to go after. Now, that might not be an armored castle on a hill. Maybe it's a castle down in a valley, but it's still got walls and it's defensible.
People are seeing right through it. People, especially in this town dominated by Democrats in Orlando, people are seeing through it. When I was down there was a woman, vote blue, no voice, no voice. Nobody talked to me. When I asked her, when I said, hey, you realize all the people in this town are Democrats? There was people around me like, yeah, we see that. So I don't agree. I think it's huge.
That may be true, but we have to be careful about applying our own perceptions to other people who have a very different experience from us. I went out and I did polling early this year, back in January, before the whole COVID thing started. And only 50% of the people I polled had ever heard of the Libertarian Party. A lot of those people, they're not paying attention. All they know.
They really do. As someone who has grown up thinking that I'm a Democrat, we are not happy. Like, that's what I'm here to tell you. Like, we are not happy. Do you think we're happy that Joe Biden is the pick for the Democratic Party?
He's hard.
Really can't fucking
He's hard.
speak?
Yeah.
We really can't even say a word. Like, we are not happy. The people who are registered Democrats, they are not happy. They literally want another answer. They want another choice. They are looking for it. You know, I didn't know a lot about libertarianism prior to this. My mom is actually heavily involved in the Libertarian Party, and so I kind of, slowly kind of dipping my toes into the water every once in a while and kind of seeing what it's about. But now we're at a point where the Democrats are not happy whatsoever, and I can seriously attest to that 100%.
So let me ask you a question. What concerns are keeping you from diving in with the Libertarian Party?
None, because that's why I'm here. I'm here to educate myself, and I don't think people are necessarily scared to dive into the Libertarian Party. They're just uneducated.
Okay.
And that was my issue, is I was just uneducated. I didn't know the values and the information. And as someone looking for an answer, we just need to have, more people help guide us to where those answers are. I'm fortunate that my mom is in the party, so she's helping me find those answers. And like my whole life was like, oh, you're a little L, you just don't even know it. You're a little L, you don't even know it. And so I'm here because I'm not happy. I want answers. Let me now try and educate myself so that way I can see that this can be the solution that a lot of us are looking for.
And that's that big step. You will have much more credibility with your people who used to be Democrats with you than I would. I come from more of a fiscally conservative, but also socially liberal background. You'll have so much more credibility with those people as you talk with them.
And I agree with that, and that's why I kind of agree with your point that if you ignore us, you're missing a huge base, 110%. Because if you can seriously stand there and say that Democrats are happy with their nominee and they're going to vote D no matter what, that's a huge lie and a huge misconception. No,
it's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is, if you want to cover that gap in understanding, that gap to overcome the fear of mainstream voters in making a change to something completely new, you want to find a group first that you can win completely. It doesn't mean you ignore the other groups. It just means that as a place to focus, that's what works in all sorts of revolutionary sales. And by the way, welcome to the revolution.
Yeah.
Yes.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.
I agree with the fiscally conservative aspect because number one is the only knockout punch that we have. So that there is messaging positive from Democrats on the civil libertarian perspective, and it is a lie, but it's positive and people believe it, and that's the thing. There's no one out there who stands beside a fiscally responsible government at the federal level. Yet in Florida, we balance our budget every year, and when we have to make cuts during huge pandemics that lead to terrible outcomes, we make those cuts because we have a balanced budget requiring the state. It should exist at the federal level, and economic oblivion is coming. And I think the more we can utilize charts, there was an independent candidate that utilized charts to discuss the national debt, almost defeated the other two candidates, and they created rules to keep out third parties from the debates following that point. But we got to get charts.
And I want to make a point here. Those charts are great with us. Those charts are great with early adopters. What the mainstream needs is not charts. What they need is the Taxpayers Association of America to come out and say, we endorse Joe Jorgensen. They need their taxpayer groups in their town to come out and say, we endorse Joe Jorgensen. They're listening for the relationships. They're not doing the research themselves. Not most of them. You know, some people will, but not most of them.
Take research. You can simply just show you a
Kevin?
picture of Ross Perot reached out to individual people, and it was the same national debt issue, and he reached 19% of the voters, and he actually threatened the entire election. I think that the message is strong. If we utilize some charts, just to show people economic oblivion is here, you are here, here's the path, we're the only way that doesn't get you to economic oblivion.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I've got a question online here. Yes, Dave Schrader.
Kevin, nice job with the presentation. Sorry, I'm getting echo back here. Basically, I was going to ask you, I'm sure the contact information for people because they could help.
I'm sorry, could we, just for a minute, I want to be able to hear the question online. I'll repeat it for everybody. Sorry, I don't have a good audio for that. Just go ahead, Dave.
Maybe I'll just type it into chat.
No, go ahead and speak. It's okay. There was just some other talk in the background. Go ahead.
Okay. Love the ideas that are coming from the audience. I think we should capture contact information so we can do focus groups. And then something that I think will help you bridge the discussion you were just having. It's really bowling pins. So, for example, people on the Democratic side, some of them, but not all of them, don't like their choice. Same thing for the Never Trumpers. So those are like different bowling pins.
Yeah.
If you lined up, maybe we try to reach out to the Never Trumpers first because they just hate Trump, but they don't really have the option. You and I have that discussion, or the Lincoln Project will slash and burn Trump, but without having another option. And so we need to have the Vote Gold effort and a variety of things. If you just want to elaborate on that.
Thanks, Dave. Dave was talking about some specifics about the Crossing the Chasm message and offered to connect with all of you. He's actually doing some data analytics work for the Joe Jorgensen campaign. And for those of you who are interested, please share your contact information. I'll give you my email address so you can reach out to me if you like. And I'd love to hear more. And I'm sorry, you hadn't another comment? Yes.
So I was just, my potential ways that I think that the media does a good job in presenting civil rights in this political atmosphere as a red herring to fiscal responsibility. I think it is a good point to target fiscal responsibility because it's getting out of hand. I mean, I don't even know what the debt ceiling was before Trump, but he promised to not raise anything, and he was cut, and he's done the opposite.
Yeah.
But since he's been in office, not to say even before then, but instead of the focus being on fiscal responsibility, hey, well, look over here, there's civil unrest, there's, people are divided. It's like, we're not really all that divided as much as we are growing a debt.
I also want to mention that me pointing out those two issues, fiscal responsibility and anti-war, as issues that we can really claim as our own. That's just my analysis. I could be wrong about that. Maybe civil rights is the best one for us to have.
I'm not saying it's the best one because I absolutely agree that you need to focus on the fiscal responsibility 100%. I'm just saying that you should also consider the black and the minorities because they aren't happy at all. It's like Biden, you're not black if you don't vote for me. Are you serious? You really don't think that you can have an audience right there?
That's total BS. And I want to be clear about this.
That's why you have this audience as well. So there's an additional one to also think about.
By talking about focusing on one, we're not talking about ignoring the others. Now, there are always going to be people from every group that come to us, and that's just going to continue to groundswell. But by focusing on one group where we have the best solution, a clear, differentiated solution, we can win that group, and that's where you start to get attention.
And it applies to everybody.
You're saying a group, though. You're talking about two. I'm saying you should take it as three. You didn't say just one.
Actually, no. It should be one. It should be exactly one group.
Yeah. Especially if you want this movement. Civil rights is one of the key. Policing is one of the key. My daughter, my 20-year-old daughter, went from sick of it all, I'm not going to vote, to watching Spike Cohen's anti-policing video, going, oh my God, I'm going to vote Libertarian. I told you I never would. And she's showing it to all her friends.
And young voters were a huge we are a huge base for you guys that are untapped. We are so untapped because we're just uneducated. And so I think that if you can reach a few more people like me, like it is my plan now to go and do the bowling pin analogy that you had, right? Where you hit me now I'm gonna go hit a few more people. I'm gonna spread the word. And I already convinced my husband. I was like, oh hey, his family's heavily Republican. Like I consider my husband to be Republican, and that's a conversation. So that's a different conversation. And literally I'm like, hey, let's check out this, and I heard Joe speak, I heard Spike speak, and check them out. And it literally says they have my vote. You know, so there's also a way to have that, you know, bowling pin analogy with the younger generation as well.
Fantastic. Yes.
Yeah. So I do like your point in regards to finding the social influencers. And when I think of like famous libertarians, I think of like Clint Eastwood, or I think of like Penn Jillette, but I'm a nerdy guy that likes to watch magic on YouTube. So I know who Penn Jillette is. I mean, I don't know if you know, but I mean, is there like targets right now? I mean, are we targeting any celebrities or any social influencers? Or?
That's why I'm giving this presentation.
Okay.
Is because I tried for 4 months to do this kind of work for Gary Johnson's campaign.
Sure.
And they didn't get it. They didn't understand how important it was to get those celebrity endorsements, to really focus on it. As I see more and more people announcing that they have support for one or another individual, yeah, it's opportunities missed for us. And that those relationships are what's going to attract the next group of voters, those mainstream voters, in addition to the bowling pin of one person to the next. That's what's really going to get us that kicker, that launch up in media and the polls, is having Drew Carey come out publicly and say he endorses Joe Jorgensen. And some of them are afraid of it, right?
Sure.
Because they might lose their business. It's not a trivial thing for them to do this. Many of them will quietly and subtly issue an endorsement, but won't want to do so publicly. And that's where a specific market, where we are the only game in town, that's where that's valuable. Any taxpayer organization anywhere, what do they got to lose by going to us? Seriously, they're going to stick with Trump? He's increased the debt by $5 trillion in the last 4 years. They're going to switch over to Biden? That's no better. They have no solution but us. They have no choice. Whereas someone interested in civil rights could at least, and say what you want about what the reality is, they could at least deceive themselves into thinking that Biden will help them and support them. It might not be true, but they might continue to think it. But we can capture all of some groups. And by capturing one, that gains more attention, more media, more press that allows us to go after the next one and the next one. So it's bowling pins after in an individual sense with the people we know in our worlds, and it's a bowling alley in the grander sense of endorsements and big picture types of issues that people care about.
I saw another question in regards to. I do like how you're narrowing that. It's similar to the hedgehog concept with good to great. Focusing on one area and just be the master, the expert, the subject matter expert there. And I feel like the 2 points that you're talking about.